The sun hammered down on the Marine Corps base like a relentless hammer, making the metal of the training yard shimmer in the blistering heat. Dust swirled around the boots of recruits as they moved in formation, sweat glinting off their foreheads. It was mid-morning, the air heavy and dry, the kind that made every breath feel like inhaling fire. And yet, through it all, Private First Class Riley Hart moved with an almost unnerving calm. Her boots hit the concrete with deliberate rhythm, a quiet defiance that made heads turn. She wasn't a tall recruit, not in the traditional sense, but there was something in her posture, the subtle coiling of her muscles, the confidence in her gaze that made other Marines instinctively step aside. Rumors whispered among the recruits as she passed. "She's soft, right? Newbie, probably can't even do 10 push-ups without collapsing." Riley didn't respond, didn't flinch, didn't care. She had her own reason for being there, one that wasn't about proving herself to anyone. Sergeant Cole, a seasoned Marine whose glare had ended more rookie careers than most drills, noticed her immediately. He had a reputation for breaking people, mentally, physically, emotionally, and his instincts screamed at him that Riley might either crumble or defy him in a way he wasn't prepared for. "Move it, Hart," Cole barked, his voice cutting through the clamor like a knife. Riley responded with precision, adjusting her stance, moving in perfect synchronization with the others. But a slight delay, an imperceptible flicker, was enough to trigger his fury. Cole's temper was legendary. A sudden shout and a violent grab at her shirt jolted Riley forward, yanking her off balance. Time seemed to slow as the fabric tore slightly under his grip, revealing her back. And then, everything stopped. The tattoo. It sprawled across her back like a living map of some secret history, a trident piercing through a dagger, surrounded by cryptic numbers, insignias, and symbols that belonged to stories no one dared speak aloud. The sheer artistry of it was intimidating, but the meaning, the legendary meaning, was what froze Cole in place. His knuckles whitened around the torn fabric. He stepped back, blinking. The heat of anger that had fueled him moments ago dissipated instantly, replaced by disbelief and a creeping fear. This wasn't a rookie, wasn't some green kid just trying to survive boot camp. This was someone else entirely, someone who belonged to a story he had only ever heard in whispers. "Cole," Riley said softly, but the quiet in her voice carried a steel undercurrent. "I don't start fights, I finish them." The yard had gone silent. A few Marines nearby squinted, trying to see what had caused their sergeant to falter. They caught a glimpse of the tattoo, and whispers immediately started. "Who? What is that?" Riley's gaze swept across them, calm, measured. She was a predator in plain sight, her composure both mesmerizing and terrifying. Cole's mind raced. That tattoo was unmistakable. It was Shadow Wolf, a SEAL operative who had vanished during a top-secret mission nearly a decade ago, believed dead by the world, yet here she stood, walking, breathing, alive. He remembered the stories, the impossible missions, the survival against odds so extreme they sounded like fiction. "She can't be," he muttered under his breath, his voice a mixture of awe and terror. The other Marines didn't understand. They only saw a girl standing there, calm as the sun beat down. They didn't see the decades of history, the legend inked into her skin, the warnings that traveled with that symbol. Riley didn't flinch under their stares. She had learned long ago that fear could be weaponized. She had survived worse than judgmental glares and ripped uniforms. She had survived enemies who would have killed most men twice her size without hesitation. Cole stepped forward, trying to regain control, but even his voice sounded hollow. "All right, get back to," he began, but the words died in his throat. His eyes remained locked on her back, on the tattoo that had stopped him cold. Riley's lips curved slightly. Not a smile, not mockery, just acknowledgement. She didn't need to say a word. Her presence, the legend she carried, spoke louder than any command. The tension in the air was electric. Around them, recruits shifted uneasily, sensing something monumental even if they didn't understand it. Whispers turned into murmurs, murmurs into outright chatter. Riley ignored it all, moving into formation, adjusting her stance like nothing had happened. But the message had been sent. Cole cleared his throat, his usual authority battling the shock in his veins. He tried to rally the squad, to push Riley into the fold like any other recruit, but the weight of what he had just seen made every order sound faint. Every drill felt muted, secondary. And then Riley caught the ball thrown carelessly by a fellow Marine, a test of reflexes meant to humiliate her, meant to prove she was soft, and she caught it effortlessly, spinning, pivoting, landing perfectly on her feet. Gasps rose from the recruits. Even Cole's jaw tightened. He knew instinctively that she wasn't just skilled, she was dangerously skilled. Her eyes met his again, calm but intense. In that brief moment, Cole realized two things. One, he had just witnessed something he couldn't unsee. And two, the arrival of Riley Hart wasn't just going to challenge the recruits, it was going to challenge him. The sun blazed overhead, the dust danced in the wind, and the training yard returned to its normal rhythm, or at least it tried. But Riley Hart had arrived, and nothing on that base would ever be the same again. And in that silence, with sweat dripping from foreheads and tension crackling in the air, one truth became clear. The legend of Shadow Wolf had returned. Suspense hook, Cole's hand twitched, his mind racing. He had just realized he wasn't dealing with a rookie at all, but with a ghost from the past. And ghosts, as he would soon learn, don't just haunt, they hunt. The heat of the training yard lingered, even as the day moved toward the late afternoon. But the tension around Private First Class Riley Hart hadn't dissipated. It had thickened, curling in the air like smoke. Sergeant Cole's mind refused to quiet itself. Every step Riley took, every measured movement, seemed to broadcast a silent warning. She was no ordinary Marine. He retreated to the shadow of a nearby building, trying to process what he had seen. That tattoo, the trident piercing the dagger, the cryptic numbers etched along her spine, was unmistakable. He had spent years listening to stories about Shadow Wolf, a SEAL operator so lethal, so meticulous, that even whispers of his missions made seasoned Marines shiver. The man, or in this case, woman, had vanished years ago during a covert operation in Southeast Asia. Officially, Shadow Wolf was declared MIA, presumed dead. Yet here she was, standing in the harsh sun, her back telling a story no one had dared speak aloud. Cole's hands trembled slightly as he replayed the moment. The torn shirt, the momentary silence, the way Riley had caught that ball with a grace that was almost supernatural. Every detail screamed one truth: Shadow Wolf had returned. He forced himself to focus. If Riley was truly Shadow Wolf, then every protocol they followed, every drill and mission, was suddenly under threat. Her mere presence altered the base dynamics. If enemies knew she was alive, they would come, not just for her but for anyone foolish enough to be near her. Across the yard, Riley adjusted her gear and moved back into formation as though nothing had happened. The other Marines stared, some confused, some awestruck. But Riley didn't flinch under their scrutiny. She had learned long ago that fear was a tool, one she wielded like a scalpel. Cole's gaze followed her every movement. He had to know, he had to confirm it. He couldn't act rashly, not here, not now. Shadow Wolf had operated in the shadows, leaving no trace, no loose ends. If Riley was indeed that legend, then confronting her without caution would be suicidal. As the drills resumed, Riley's skill became impossible to ignore. During a hand-to-hand exercise, she moved with lightning precision, anticipating every opponent's strike before it happened. One recruit lunged at her with a practiced punch, only to find himself gently, but firmly, redirected onto the mat. A ripple of murmurs spread through the yard. She wasn't just good, she was inhumanly good. Cole's internal conflict grew. Every instinct screamed at him to call out her identity, to challenge her directly. But he hesitated. Shadow Wolf didn't just return from the dead to train Marines. Shadow Wolf returned with purpose, and that purpose, Cole realized with a sinking feeling, was probably dangerous. Later, in the quiet of the barracks, Cole approached her, trying to hide the storm raging inside him. "Heart," he began, his voice steady despite the adrenaline. Riley's eyes lifted, calm and unreadable. Your shadow wolf," he said, each word a mix of awe, disbelief, and fear. Riley didn't answer immediately. She studied him the way a predator studies its prey, measuring, calculating. Then, with a measured breath, she said, "I didn't come back for glory." Her tone was flat, almost casual, but the weight behind it was palpable. "I came back because someone here isn't ready for what's coming." Cole's heart skipped. He had felt danger before, but this was different. This wasn't just about combat skill or survival. It was about history, secrecy, and enemies the base couldn't even imagine. Riley's words echoed in the dimly lit room. "You'll see soon enough, and when you do, make sure you're prepared." She turned, walking away, leaving Cole standing there, a mixture of respect and fear coiling in his chest. That night Cole couldn't sleep. Memories of the stories he'd heard about Shadow Wolf haunted him. Missions that defied belief, enemy forces crushed silently, escapes that seemed impossible. And now, the person behind those legends was here, in their base, among recruits who had no idea who they were dealing with. The next morning, Riley's presence continued to ripple through the training yard. Cole watched as she corrected a Marine stance mid-drill, her hands firm but controlled. Every movement was precise, deliberate. She was teaching lessons in dominance, efficiency, and survival without uttering a single word. And then came the moment that confirmed it beyond any doubt. During a simulated live-fire exercise, a trainee mishandled his weapon, aiming dangerously close to another Marine. Instinctively, Riley moved faster than thought, disarming him with a swift motion, redirecting the weapon safely, and then stepping back without a single hair out of place. Gasps filled the air. Cole's jaw tightened. He had just witnessed a live demonstration of skill that belonged in the most classified SEAL operations, not in a basic training yard. The other Marines began to whisper openly now, some in awe, some in disbelief. "Is she real? I thought Shadow Wolf was dead." Riley ignored them all, her calmness a stark contrast to the chaos of murmurs surrounding her. Cole approached her again after the exercise, his mind racing. "Why now?" he asked, voice low. "Why here?" Riley met his gaze, her eyes cold and sharp. "Because they know I'm back, and they're coming for me, and for anyone who's foolish enough to stand in the way." A chill ran down Cole's spine. Every training drill, every routine day, suddenly felt meaningless. The base, their safety, their lives, all were in jeopardy because Riley Hart, the living legend, had returned, and whatever or whoever was coming for her would not hesitate to strike. Cole realized something crucial. This was bigger than pride, discipline, or training. This was survival. Shadow Wolf didn't just survive impossible missions abroad. She survived by being smarter, faster, deadlier than anyone else. And now her enemies would be forced to adapt or die. Riley didn't say more. She didn't need to. The presence of the legend, the unspoken warning in her movements, and the tattoo etched into her back said everything. She had returned not to be a recruit, not to blend in, but to prepare, and perhaps protect, those around her. Cole's mind raced as he pieced it together. If she had survived the impossible, if she had returned, it meant that whatever threat she had faced before was not finished. Someone, somewhere, was still hunting Shadow Wolf. And now, that someone would be looking for her on U.S. soil. The sun was beginning to set, painting the sky in streaks of orange and crimson, and the base took on an eerie, almost cinematic glow. Shadows stretched long across the yard, mingling with the tension that hung thick in the air. Riley Hart moved among the recruits, calm, measured, but every step carried a warning. She was more than just a Marine, she was a legend, a storm waiting to strike, and the beginning of something that could change everything. Cole clenched his fists, his training and instincts screaming at him to prepare. Whatever was coming, he knew one thing. Shadow Wolf didn't just survive threats, she destroyed them. And now the base and everyone on it was about to be tested in ways none of them could imagine. Suspense hook. As the sky darkened and the first stars began to emerge, Cole received a brief encrypted message on his secure line. The words made him freeze. Shadow Wolf has returned. They know, prepare immediately. The barracks were unusually quiet that evening. Most Marines had retired to their bunks after a long day of grueling drills, the echo of boots on concrete fading into the background. But Sergeant Cole couldn't rest, not tonight. His mind was consumed with images he couldn't unsee. The tattoo sprawled across Riley Hart's back, the effortless precision with which she had moved during drills, and the knowledge that she wasn't merely a recruit. She was Shadow Wolf, alive, here, among them. Cole paced the dimly lit hall, the fluorescent lights casting long shadows across his face. He remembered every story he had ever heard of Shadow Wolf, the impossible rescues, the covert missions that defied belief, the vanishings that had haunted intelligence files for years. And now, he had witnessed the living proof in the flesh. He stopped at her bunk, his knuckles brushing against the worn metal frame as he collected himself. "Hart," he called softly. Riley appeared immediately, as though she had been waiting for him. Her posture was relaxed, but there was a tension in her shoulders, a readiness that made Cole's pulse quicken. Her eyes, dark and piercing, didn't waver. "You need to tell me something," Cole began, his voice low, cautious. "I saw your back, the tattoo. That's Shadow Wolf." Riley's lips curved slightly, not a smile but a hint of acknowledgement. "I didn't come back for glory," she said evenly. "I came back for a reason, because someone here isn't ready for what's coming." Cole froze. The weight of her words settled over him like a storm cloud. "What do you mean?" he asked, though a part of him already knew the answer. Riley leaned against the edge of her bunk, her arms crossed. "There's a threat, something that's been waiting in the shadows for years. When I disappeared, they thought I was dead. They were wrong, and now they're coming." Cole's stomach twisted. He had faced danger before during deployments and live-fire exercises, but the tone in her voice, calm, unflinching, and full of certainty, terrified him. "And it involves the base?" he asked. Her eyes met his. "Yes, they're tracking me. Anyone connected to me is a target, and that includes you and your squad." The room seemed to shrink around him. Cole had always prided himself on being prepared, on keeping his Marines safe. But now, everything he knew about safety, control, and readiness felt inadequate. Shadow Wolf didn't just survive impossible missions, she dominated impossible threats. And if she was telling him that danger was near, he knew it was already inside the base perimeter. Cole swallowed hard. "Why didn't you come back earlier? Why train with us as if?" "Because I needed to see who I could trust," Riley interrupted, her tone sharp, commanding. "You, some of your squad, I had to know who could keep up, who could survive what's coming." Cole's chest tightened. He had underestimated the situation. Training was no longer just about drills or discipline, it was about survival. And Shadow Wolf had just handed him a warning: mistakes would cost lives. "You can't just tell me this and expect me to," Cole's voice faltered. "I need proof, I need a plan." Riley's gaze softened almost imperceptibly before hardening again. "You'll get proof soon enough, but the plan is mine. I don't just come back and leave chaos behind. I prepare, I strike, and I protect those who can survive the storm." Cole's heart pounded. He wanted to argue, to assert control, but the truth was undeniable. Riley Hart was a weapon, a force that could no longer be contained by rank or protocol. And if her enemies were as skilled as she implied, any delay would be fatal. There was a long pause as the two stared at each other, the weight of unspoken truths hanging thick in the air. Cole realized something chilling. He wasn't just confronting a returning legend. He was confronting history in motion, a living testament to everything the military had ever feared and revered. Riley finally broke the silence. "I need you to trust me," she said, her voice steady. For the first time, trust isn't about following orders. It's about surviving together. Can you do that? Cole's throat tightened. He had never been asked to follow someone like this, someone whose reputation preceded them to the point of myth. Yet the fire in her eyes, the precision in her movements, and the subtle authority in her voice left no room for hesitation. "Yes," he said finally, the word tasting heavy but certain. "I trust you." Her expression softened just for a moment. "Good, because we don't have much time." Before Cole could ask more, Riley pulled out a thin, encrypted folder from her duffel bag and set it on the bunk between them. The weight of the folder seemed disproportionate to its size. "This," she said, "is what's coming. Your squad is in it. Every drill, every exercise, every mistake, this mission will demand everything. There's no margin for error." Cole opened the folder slowly, his eyes scanning the contents. Names, coordinates, operational notes, classified intelligence that would make even a seasoned officer shiver. And then his gaze landed on a single line, the name of one of his closest Marines. His blood ran cold. Riley's voice cut through his shock. "They've already started. If we don't move fast, your people won't survive the first encounter, and I won't let that happen." Cole felt a mix of fear, respect, and determination. Shadow Wolf had returned, and she wasn't here to play by anyone's rules. The rules had changed. Survival, precision, and loyalty were the only currencies that mattered. Suddenly, the barracks door creaked open, and a faint shadow passed across the hallway outside. Riley's eyes narrowed, scanning the darkness with the precision of a predator. "They're closer than we thought," she murmured. "We need to move. Now." Cole's pulse quickened. He realized that every instinct, every drill, every lesson he had ever taught his Marines was about to be tested in ways he could never anticipate. And he knew, deep down, that this was only the beginning. Riley grabbed her gear, moving with deliberate urgency. Cole followed, instinctively knowing that hesitation would be deadly. The hallway seemed to shrink as the weight of the unknown pressed down on them. Every corner, every shadow could conceal a threat. They reached the training yard once more, but it was no longer just a place for drills. The setting sun cast long, dark shadows across the ground, painting the area in hues of orange and red that made the familiar terrain look alien. Riley stopped, scanning the perimeter, her eyes sharp and unyielding. Cole approached her cautiously. "What now?" he asked. Riley didn't answer immediately. Instead, she pulled a small, encrypted device from her bag and tapped a sequence of buttons. A map illuminated, showing red markers scattered across the region surrounding the base. "They're moving," she said finally, her voice low but deadly serious. "And they're coming for me and anyone connected to me. We need to act before it's too late." Cole felt the weight of the situation crush him. The training yard, the base, their routines. It was all irrelevant now. This was no longer about drills or discipline. This was a war, and Shadow Wolf had returned to lead it. Her presence was magnetic, terrifying, and commanding all at once. Cole realized that following her wasn't just a choice. It was the only way to survive. And if he failed, he wouldn't just lose a mission. He would lose everything. Suspense hook. Just as Riley prepared to move, a distant noise echoed from the tree line, a metallic snap followed by a whisper of movement. Riley's eyes sharpened and she whispered almost to herself, "They're here." Cole's heart stopped. In that moment, he understood that the legend had returned, and the hunters had already arrived. The morning sun rose slowly over the Marine Corps base, casting long shadows across the training yard. Normally, this was a place of routine, drills, push-ups, and the grueling repetition that hardened recruits into Marines. But today, the air felt charged, electric. Every Marine who passed Riley Hart sensed something different, though none could articulate it. Something about her presence bent reality in subtle ways. She wasn't just a recruit, a trainee. She was a storm waiting to strike. Sergeant Cole watched from the sidelines, his jaw tight. He had spent the night replaying the events of yesterday in his head. The tattoo, the folder, Riley's words about the incoming threat. His mind was a whirlwind of fear and awe. But he had also realized something crucial. If Riley was Shadow Wolf, then training would never again be the same. She was no longer here to follow orders. She was here to reshape everything. Riley started the day with a series of drills unlike anything the recruits had ever encountered. Every command was precise, every movement deliberate. She corrected posture mid-lunge, shifted hands mid-grip, and anticipated mistakes before they could happen. Marines stumbled, some out of sheer incompetence, others out of fear. Riley's eyes, sharp and unyielding, scanned every face, every motion, and the slightest hesitation drew a correction so fast it left the recipients dizzy. "Move," she barked during a timed drill, her voice slicing through the yard like a blade. One recruit stumbled, misjudging a jump over an obstacle. Riley intercepted him midair, catching him with a firm grip and landing him safely on the mat with a fluidity that was almost terrifying. The yard went silent for a heartbeat, and then murmurs spread like wildfire. Cole's mind raced. This was more than training. This was a demonstration, a calculated display of skill meant to impress, intimidate, and teach simultaneously. Riley wasn't just showing them how to survive. She was showing them how to think, anticipate, and dominate under pressure. Later, during a hand-to-hand exercise, Riley faced a particularly aggressive recruit who had been mocking her since the drills began. He lunged, aiming a punch with all his might, expecting her to falter. Instead, she sidestepped, caught his wrist midair and twisted, forcing him onto the ground with minimal effort but maximum impact. Her movements were precise, almost artistic but deadly. Every Marine in the yard froze, understanding that this wasn't brute strength. It was skill honed to lethal perfection. Cole stepped forward, his voice tight. "Heart enough," he said, but even he knew the words were hollow. Riley didn't respond verbally. Her gaze swept the yard, a silent challenge to anyone who thought they could underestimate her. And then it happened, the live fire exercise. Normally a routine part of training designed to teach Marines proper weapon handling. But today, Riley transformed it into a performance of near-superhuman precision. A recruit mishandled his weapon, the barrel swinging dangerously close to another Marine. In a heartbeat, Riley was there, disarming him, redirecting the weapon, and ensuring no one was harmed. The movement was almost imperceptible to the naked eye, yet it was perfect. Every Marine in the yard stared in awe. Even Cole felt a mix of pride, fear, and disbelief. "You're unreal," muttered one of the younger Marines under his breath. Riley ignored him. She had no need for acknowledgement. Her focus was the unseen threat beyond the base, the storm that was gathering silently. After the exercises, Riley pulled Cole aside. Her voice was low, urgent. "They know I'm back," she said. "The people who have been hunting me, they're closer than we thought. We need to prepare your squad for what's coming, and we don't have time to waste." Cole swallowed hard. He had known the threat was real, but hearing it directly from her, the living legend, made the danger tangible. "What do you need me to do?" he asked. Riley's eyes narrowed. "Trust me, that's the first thing. Then follow my lead. Every drill from now on is a test, not just of skill but of survival instincts. I'll push your Marines to the edge, and those who crack won't be ready when it counts." The intensity of her words settled over Cole like a weight. He realized that this training wasn't just for the physical, it was psychological, a trial by fire designed to separate the capable from the doomed. And he knew that every moment, every decision, could mean the difference between life and death. As the day wore on, Riley's methods became increasingly unorthodox. She moved through drills with a fluidity that made her seem almost like a ghost, always present, always anticipating, never faltering. Cole watched recruits who had been mocking her just hours earlier now follow her instructions with a mix of reverence and fear. The power she commanded was subtle but absolute. During a break, Riley pulled aside one of the recruits who had been particularly defiant. With a few simple movements, she corrected his form, adjusted his grip, and even corrected his posture in a way that seemed to teach him instinctively. The boy's eyes widened, a mixture of awe and intimidation. I've never seen anything like that," he stammered. "Good," Riley replied simply. "You will." Cole observed all of this and understood something crucial. Riley's return was more than just legend. It was a warning. She had survived impossible missions, faced enemies that no one else could touch, and now she was here to prepare this base for something far beyond routine drills. The sun began to dip toward the horizon, casting long, ominous shadows across the yard. Riley paused, looking out toward the tree line beyond the base. Her gaze was hard, focused, and distant. Cole noticed the subtle tension in her shoulders, the way her eyes flicked toward every movement in the distance. "Something's coming," she murmured, almost to herself. Cole felt a chill run down his spine. The training yard, the familiar drills, the structured routines, all of it suddenly felt insignificant compared to the storm gathering beyond the base perimeter. And Riley, calm, controlled, and lethal, was the only one prepared to face it. As dusk fell, Riley gathered the squad for a debrief. Her voice carried authority, precision, and an edge of steel that left no room for doubt or argument. "They're watching, they're waiting, and they're skilled. I will not ask anyone to do something I haven't already survived myself, but mistakes will cost lives." The squad absorbed her words in silence, the weight of the reality sinking in. Cole realized that he had underestimated not just her, but the threat she carried with her. This was no longer about drills. This was about survival, preparation, and the unknown enemy that would test them in ways they couldn't imagine. Finally, Riley's gaze swept the entire squad, resting briefly on Cole. "Tonight you'll rest. Tomorrow we begin real preparation. And understand this, what we face will not wait for you to be ready. It will not negotiate. It will strike. And we must be faster, sharper, and stronger than anything it throws at us." Cole nodded, understanding fully the gravity of her words. Shadow Wolf had returned, not just to train, but to prepare, to protect, and to lead. And whatever was coming, the base, the squad, and every Marine in it would be tested to the breaking point. Suspense hook. As the squad dispersed, Cole lingered, his eyes on Riley. A faint mechanical sound echoed from the tree line beyond the base, metal scraping against metal. Riley's head snapped toward the noise, eyes narrowing. Her voice was calm, cold, and deadly. "They're closer than I thought. We have company." Cole felt his heart stop. The storm had arrived, night had fallen over the base, but the darkness was far from peaceful. The normally calm barracks and training grounds were now thick with tension, every rustle of wind or distant sound setting nerves on edge. The Marines moved with an unusual alertness, whispering to one another as if instinctively aware that something was wrong. Yet none of them could articulate the danger. Only Riley Hart, known to few as Shadow Wolf, understood the magnitude of the threat approaching. Sergeant Cole watched her closely. Her presence alone seemed to heighten the tension, and for the first time he realized the truth that had been lingering in the back of his mind. Training, discipline, and drills were meaningless if one could not survive the unknown. Riley had returned for a reason, and it wasn't to prove herself. It was to confront an enemy whose reach extended far beyond the safety of their base. A secure message arrived on Cole's encrypted line, brief and chilling. "Possible breach. Shadow Wolf detected. Neutralized before extraction." Cole's stomach twisted. Someone had already discovered her presence, and they were coming not just for Riley, but for anyone close to her. The thought sent an icy chill down his spine. Riley stood silently by the perimeter, scanning the shadows like a predator. The moonlight glinted off her tactical gear, outlining the muscles honed through years of impossible missions. Every movement was controlled, deliberate, and eerily calm, yet a barely perceptible tension suggested the storm gathering on the horizon. "They're moving faster than I thought," she murmured. "They've infiltrated intelligence channels. Someone on the inside is helping them." Cole's eyes widened. Treachery within the base was unthinkable, but with Riley the unthinkable was always possible. "Inside," he whispered. "How?" "They've been waiting for me," Riley interrupted, her voice deadly calm. "Years of preparation. Every contact, every file, every mission I ever undertook, they've studied it all. And now they've come for the prize, me, and anyone standing in my way." The first signs of the attack arrived with a subtle warning, a faint glint on the tree line, a shadow that shouldn't have moved. Riley didn't flinch. She simply nodded toward Cole. "Stay sharp. They're testing our perimeter. Probe attacks first. Minimal casualties, they want me alive until extraction, but I won't give them that luxury." Cole nodded, feeling the gravity of the moment. He had faced ambushes before, firefights on foreign soil and chaos beyond imagination, but nothing compared to the precision and intent Riley exuded. She wasn't reacting, she was anticipating. Suddenly, a figure darted from the tree line, moving faster than a human should. A trainee raised his weapon instinctively, but Riley was already there, intercepting the intruder with a combination of martial skill and precise force. The attacker went down silently, the only sound a soft grunt of impact. The rest of the squad froze. They had seen combat training, tactical drills, and even simulated attacks, but this was different. This was real. Shadow Wolf wasn't just a legend, she was an apex predator in human form. Riley's eyes scanned the perimeter again, calculating, analyzing. "This was only a test," she said. "A warning shot. They know I'm back and they're coming in force. We need to be ready or the base will be compromised by sunrise." Cole felt the tension coil like a snake in his chest. He understood now that the threat was both external and internal. The rogue operatives hunting Riley were not amateurs. They were trained, disciplined, and lethal, and they had eyes and ears inside the base. Riley moved through the squad with silent efficiency, adjusting positions, whispering corrections, and ensuring every Marine understood their role in the looming fight. Her voice carried authority that brooked no argument. "Tonight, we survive. Tomorrow, we strike." The squad followed her orders, moving with a precision that came from sheer necessity. Fear sharpened their senses, and Riley's presence amplified it, a constant reminder that mistakes would be fatal. Cole approached her, voice low. "They're faster than we anticipated. How do we prepare?" Riley's gaze was steady, unflinching. "We train them in ways they've never imagined. They need to anticipate threats, read movements, and react without hesitation. I'll push them to their limits. Only those who survive will be ready for what comes next." Hours passed in a blur of drills, tactical exercises, and survival maneuvers. Riley's methods were unorthodox but effective. She corrected mistakes before they happened, adjusted positioning mid-movement, and forced the squad to confront scenarios that tested both mind and body. Every Marine felt the weight of her experience pressing down on them, and every error was met with swift, precise correction. And then the real threat emerged. Explosions echoed from the perimeter, sending dust and debris into the air. Shadows darted across the tree line and gunfire erupted, sharp and deadly. Riley didn't flinch. She moved like a phantom, intercepting threats, disarming attackers, and coordinating her squad with unmatched efficiency. Cole found himself struggling to keep up, his training and experience no match for her speed and foresight. He realized something terrifying. Shadow Wolf had survived years in enemy territory because she was always 2 steps ahead. And now, the enemy had come to test her, and by extension, everyone under her protection. Amid the chaos, Riley moved toward a group of attackers attempting to flank the base. With precise, lethal efficiency, she neutralized each threat. The squad followed her lead, their earlier fear transforming into a focused, almost primal determination to survive. Cole noticed one attacker slipping past their defenses, approaching with deadly intent. He raised his weapon, but Riley was already there, intercepting the intruder with a swift strike that incapacitated him instantly. The squad watched in stunned silence. When the smoke cleared, Riley stood in the middle of the yard, calm, composed, and utterly in control. Cole's chest heaved as he tried to process the events. The attackers were gone, or at least neutralized, but the message was clear. Shadow Wolf was back, and the enemy would stop at nothing to reach her. Riley turned to Cole, voice low and urgent. "This is only the beginning. They know we're here. They're coming for me, and for anyone connected to me. We need to move before it's too late." Cole nodded, understanding the gravity of her words. The base, their routines, their lives. It was all about to be tested in ways they could never imagine. And only Riley, the living legend, had the experience, skill, and foresight to lead them through the storm. As night fell completely, shadows deepened across the base. Every rustle of wind, every distant sound, carried the weight of impending danger. Riley's gaze swept the perimeter once more, sharp and calculating. Suspense hook. From the tree line a faint signal flickered, a laser dot landing briefly on a distant wall. Riley's eyes narrowed. "They're targeting us," she whispered, "and the real fight is just beginning." The base was no longer a safe haven. Darkness had settled over the training grounds like a heavy blanket, but the night was anything but quiet. Every rustle of leaves, every snap of a twig sounded like a gunshot in the tense silence. The Marines moved cautiously, weapons ready, hearts pounding in unison with the distant thrum of unseen danger. Cole followed Riley Hart closely, his eyes darting to every shadow, trying desperately to anticipate what she already knew. The enemy was near, and they were deadly. Riley's movements were fluid, almost imperceptible, like a predator slipping through the underbrush. Cole had witnessed her skill before in drills, in controlled scenarios, but now it was real. Every step she took was measured, every motion calculated. Her eyes scanned the tree line, searching for threats, analyzing patterns, reading intentions before they could materialize. It was as if she had seen the future and was adjusting in real time. "They've split into small teams," she whispered, barely audible. "They're testing us, probing for weaknesses. The goal isn't confrontation yet, it's assessment. They want to know how far I've come, how fast we can react." Cole nodded, his chest tight. He realized this wasn't a simple infiltration. These operatives weren't just trained, they were hunting a legend, and their prey was Shadow Wolf. That they were targeting her here on U.S. soil meant this was personal. A sudden movement caught Riley's eye, a figure darting between trees, almost invisible in the shadows. She froze for a moment, then sprang forward like a coiled spring. Cole barely had time to react. Riley's hand shot out, grabbing the intruder mid-motion, twisting him into submission with effortless precision. The attacker went down silently, unconscious before hitting the ground. Cole's jaw dropped. He had trained in live-fire situations, faced ambushes in war zones, and endured tactical exercises designed to push soldiers to the brink. None of it compared to watching Riley in action. She wasn't just a Marine. She was an apex predator. "Move," she ordered, motioning the squad forward. "They're regrouping. If we don't pursue them, they'll vanish and strike where we're weakest. Stay sharp, anticipate every move." The squad followed her into the dense tree line surrounding the base, every Marine alert, every sense heightened. Shadows twisted and shifted as they moved through the forest, the moonlight illuminating glimpses of movement in the underbrush. The enemy was clever, trained to avoid detection, but Riley was better. Cole realized that the chase itself was a test, one that would reveal who could keep up under real pressure. Riley's skills weren't just combat. They were psychological, tactical, and intuitive. She was teaching them survival in motion, and every Marine was being stretched to their limits. Suddenly, gunfire erupted in the distance, a warning shot precise and calculated. Riley didn't hesitate. She signaled the squad to take cover, scanning the terrain for the source. "They want to see how we react," she said calmly. "They're looking for weaknesses, don't give them any." A figure appeared briefly between the trees, a rogue operative moving with terrifying speed and intent. Riley moved faster, intercepting him before he could react. The fight was over in seconds. Cole barely had time to register what had happened. The operative was down, incapacitated, yet Riley's expression remained unreadable, as though she had expected nothing less. "This is only a probe," she said quietly. "They're testing me. They want to know if I'm ready, if we're ready. But the next attack will be decisive." Cole swallowed hard. He knew she was right. The precision, speed, and coordination of the attacks suggested intelligence, strategy, and intent. These weren't amateurs. They were professional hunters trained to eliminate Shadow Wolf. And now Cole understood the stakes. Failure meant death, not just for Riley, but for everyone in her orbit. The chase continued through dense foliage, across rocky terrain, and into abandoned structures surrounding the base. Riley moved like a shadow, leading the squad in a coordinated pursuit, neutralizing threats with uncanny precision. Every Marine followed her, adrenaline and fear propelling them forward. Cole marveled at her efficiency and calm under pressure. At one point, an operative attempted to flank them, approaching silently from the side. Cole reacted instinctively, raising his weapon, but Riley was already there. In a fluid motion, she intercepted the intruder, neutralizing him with a combination of martial skill and precise force that left the squad stunned. "They've underestimated me," Riley said, her voice calm but sharp. "That's their first mistake. It will be their last." As they advanced deeper into the abandoned terrain, Riley paused, scanning a dilapidated warehouse that had clearly been used as a staging ground. Shadows moved inside, figures coordinating their next strike. Riley crouched low, studying the patterns, then signaled the squad. "Split up. Silent approach. Neutralize any threats quietly. This is their hub. We hit hard, we hit fast, and we disappear before reinforcements arrive." Cole nodded, understanding the gravity of the situation. He had been a leader, a trainer, and a soldier, but Riley's plan required absolute trust. Hesitation could mean death. He glanced at his Marines, seeing their determination hardened by fear, respect, and the urgency of survival. The squad moved like shadows through the warehouse, every movement calculated, every sound muted. Riley led the way, her eyes constantly scanning, anticipating, and reacting. One operative emerged from the shadows, aiming a weapon at Cole, but Riley was faster. A swift movement, a precise strike, and the threat was neutralized before Cole could react. "This is what it means to survive," Riley whispered, her voice low and commanding. "We don't wait for the enemy to make mistakes. We anticipate, we adapt, and we strike with precision." Cole felt a mixture of awe and fear. Riley's words weren't just strategy, they were a philosophy, a method of existence honed through years of impossible missions. And now, they were living it. The squad pressed on, clearing the warehouse room by room. Each operative they encountered was dealt with swiftly, silently, and efficiently. Cole realized that Riley's legend was no exaggeration. Shadow Wolf had survived countless enemies, impossible odds, and near-death scenarios, not by luck, but by being faster, sharper, and smarter than anyone else. As they reached the final room, a lone operative attempted a desperate escape. Riley moved without hesitation, intercepting him before he could flee. Cole watched, frozen, as Riley disarmed, incapacitated, and secured him in mere seconds. "Good," she said, her voice calm but with a deadly edge. "This was their first coordinated attempt. They're smart but predictable. Now we know their patterns, their timing, and their methods. The next attack, they won't be this careless." Cole's chest heaved. He understood now that the legend wasn't just a story, it was reality. Shadow Wolf didn't survive because she was strong. She survived because she anticipated, adapted, and dominated. And she had just taught him and the squad the first real lesson in survival. Suspense hook. As they exited the warehouse, Cole noticed a faint red glow in the distance, a signal flare almost imperceptible. Riley's eyes narrowed, her body tense. "They know where we are," she said, her voice deadly calm. "And the hunt is about to escalate." Sky was a murky gray, streaked with the first hints of dawn, yet the darkness that had enveloped the base never truly lifted. Every corner, every shadow, seemed to breathe with anticipation, as if the world itself knew the storm was far from over. For Riley Hart and Sergeant Cole, the chase had only just begun. The warehouse had been cleared, but the signal flare in the distance, the red glow that marked the enemy's awareness, was a warning that the hunt was escalating. Cole's chest still heaved from the adrenaline of the night. He had followed Riley through the tree line, across rough terrain, and into the heart of enemy territory. He had witnessed firsthand the lethal efficiency, calm precision, and near-superhuman reflexes that had made Shadow Wolf a legend. And now, as the sun's first light painted the training yard in cold hues, he realized the truth. Their enemies weren't just skilled, they were relentless. "They've regrouped," Riley said, her voice low but commanding. Her eyes scanned the horizon, catching subtle movements in the distance. "They've analyzed our actions, learned our patterns, and they know what we're capable of. They're adapting." Cole swallowed hard. He had anticipated danger, yes, but he hadn't anticipated this level of calculation. These were not ordinary rogue operatives. They were professionals trained to neutralize the most lethal threats. And now, Shadow Wolf's return had become their obsession. "Riley," Cole began cautiously, "why me? Why bring us into this? These are elite operatives, they could." "They already know about you," Riley interrupted, her voice sharp. "Anyone connected to me becomes a target. Your squad isn't just training, it's survival. Every mistake is now life or death." Cole's mind reeled. The folder she had shown him days ago suddenly felt like more than intel. It was a warning, a map of survival and death intertwined. And now the enemy had moved from testing them to targeting them directly. The squad gathered, following Riley's lead with an intensity born of fear, respect, and necessity. The night had forged a bond between them, a shared understanding that only the strongest, the most focused, and the most adaptable would survive what was coming. Riley moved among them, adjusting positions, whispering corrections, and teaching instinctive reactions that would save lives in the coming confrontation. As they approached a ridge overlooking the base, Riley signaled the squad to halt. Her eyes narrowed, catching a faint movement far below, a shadow flitting along the perimeter fence, deliberately avoiding detection. "They're probing again," she murmured. "They want to know if we've learned from last night, but this time it's not a test, it's preparation for the main strike." Cole's hand instinctively went to his weapon. "Can we stop them?" Riley's eyes glinted with a dangerous certainty. "We don't stop them, we anticipate. We strike first and we control the battlefield. That's the only way to survive." Before Cole could respond, a sudden explosion rocked the perimeter below. Dust and debris shot into the air as alarms blared across the base. The rogue operatives had escalated, and the first wave of the real assault was underway. Riley moved like lightning, signaling the squad to take defensive positions. "They'll come in waves. Watch your angles, cover each other, and stay unpredictable. They expect patterns, don't give them any." The first wave emerged from the tree line, armed, disciplined, and deadly. Cole watched as Riley engaged them with the efficiency of someone who had done this countless times. She neutralized threats before they could react, disarming, incapacitating, and redirecting with precision that left the squad both terrified and inspired. Then it happened, a moment that sent shockwaves through Cole. One of the attackers, a tall, muscular operative, broke through the squad's perimeter, moving with a speed that rivaled Riley herself. Cole raised his weapon, but before he could act, Riley intercepted him with a fluid, almost surreal movement. In seconds, the operative was disarmed, pinned, and restrained. Cole's breath caught. He had seen her in action before, yes, but never against an adversary that matched her in speed and strength. And yet, she had dominated effortlessly. "They're stronger than last night," Riley muttered, her eyes scanning for more. "And they're not alone." It was then that the revelation hit. One of the restrained operatives spoke, defiant, confident, and chillingly familiar. "Shadow Wolf," he sneered. "Thought you could hide, thought you could escape the past." Riley's jaw tightened. "You," she whispered, Recognition flashed in her eyes. "I should have known you'd be involved." The operative smirked. "We all have scores to settle. You disappeared, ruined operations, made us irrelevant, and now you're back. This time, you won't get away." Cole felt his stomach twist. Riley's past was catching up with her in ways he hadn't imagined. These weren't random attackers. They were former SEALs, rogue operatives who had once worked alongside Shadow Wolf. Betrayal, envy, and unfinished business had festered over years, and now they had returned to finish the job. "They were part of my team," Riley said quietly, voice tight with controlled anger. "We trained together, fought together, and some of them couldn't handle the truth. They couldn't handle me surviving what they couldn't. That's why they're here." Cole processed the gravity of her words. These weren't just enemies. They were ghosts from her own past, operatives who had once trusted her, fought alongside her, and now sought vengeance. The squad tensed as more movement emerged from the tree line. Riley's eyes scanned, calculating distances, angles, and potential threats. "They're surrounding us," she said. "We need to move fast or we'll be trapped." Cole felt a surge of adrenaline. He had trained for combat scenarios, faced ambushes, and survived firefights, but this was different. The stakes were personal, intimate, and lethal. Shadow Wolf's past was not just a story, it was a war waiting to erupt, and now it was here. Riley led the squad through a series of tactical maneuvers, drawing the rogue operatives into positions where they could be neutralized efficiently. Every movement, every decision was precise, calculated, and lethal. Cole realized that the legend he had witnessed was no myth. Riley Hart was a master strategist, predator and protector rolled into one. Finally, they cornered the remaining operatives in a narrow canyon, the terrain forcing them into a confined space. Riley moved with lethal elegance, disarming and incapacitating each rogue operative in rapid succession. The squad watched, awestruck and terrified, as Shadow Wolf's skill dominated the battlefield. When the last operative was subdued, Riley turned to Cole, her eyes hard and unyielding. "This is what it means to face your past," she said. "The people you trust can become the people who hunt you, and you have to be ready for both." Cole nodded, understanding fully. This was more than survival. It was a lesson in trust, strategy, and the deadly consequences of betrayal. Riley's past had caught up with her, but she had met it head-on and emerged victorious. Suspense hook. As the dust settled, Riley's eyes scanned the horizon. In the distance, faint lights flickered signals, subtle but unmistakable. She stiffened, voice low and tense. "That wasn't the main force," she whispered. "They've only just begun, and the final battle is coming." The dawn broke like a shiver across the base, pale and cold, but there was no warmth, no comfort in the light. Every shadow still clung stubbornly to the corners of the training yard, the tree line, the abandoned warehouses, the remnants of last night's chaos. But Riley Hart, the living legend known as Shadow Wolf, was far from done. The rogue operatives from her past had tested her, provoked her, and revealed the full extent of their reach. Now it was time to end it. Sergeant Cole and the squad assembled behind her, tense but focused. Their training, their fear, and their awe of Riley had coalesced into a single purpose: survive, protect each other, and neutralize the threat before it escalated any further. But even as they prepared, Riley knew the truth. The final battle would require more than skill. It would demand strategy, instinct, and sheer nerve. "They've regrouped," Riley said, her voice calm, yet carrying the weight of authority. "They've been watching, learning, and planning. This isn't just about me. They've targeted the entire base. If we hesitate, more of our people will die. We strike now, and we strike with precision." Cole's jaw tightened. "We're ready," he said, though he felt the full gravity of the situation. Every Marine understood that failure meant death, not just for them but for everyone in the base. Riley scanned the tree line, mapping every angle, every movement, every possible route of attack. "We split into 2 teams," she instructed. "Cole, you lead one. I'll lead the other. We converge on their main force. Keep your squad tight, anticipate, and remember, speed and precision save lives. Hesitation gets people killed. The squads moved like shadows, slipping through the tree line, each Marine hyper-aware of the faintest sound, the smallest movement. Riley led her team with the grace and lethal precision of someone who had survived impossible odds countless times. Every step was calculated, every motion instinctive, every decision a matter of life or death. They reached the outskirts of the rogue operative's staging area, a complex of abandoned warehouses, partially camouflaged and protected by surveillance equipment that could detect even the faintest movement. Riley crouched low, scanning the terrain. Her eyes flicked over sensors, shadows, and faint trails in the dust. She turned to Cole. "They're expecting us," she said quietly. "But not like this. Not with speed, stealth, and coordination. They won't see us coming until it's too late." Cole's heart pounded. He had faced ambushes before, faced enemies in hostile terrain, and survived firefights in war zones, but never like this. Riley Hart was not just a soldier. She was a predator, a strategist, a master of anticipation. And now Cole realized he and his squad were following her into legend. With a subtle hand signal, Riley advanced, leading her team toward the first warehouse. Every movement was deliberate. Every step was measured. They neutralized sensors silently, incapacitated lone guards with precision, and moved like ghosts through the compound. Cole's team mirrored her movements, adapting quickly, following her lead with trust forged through fear, respect, and necessity. The first wave of rogue operatives appeared suddenly, attempting to cut them off. Riley didn't hesitate. She intercepted the lead operative, disarming him in a blur of motion, her movements so fast that Cole could barely follow them with his eyes. The operative crumpled silently, incapacitated before he could even draw his weapon. "Keep moving," Riley shouted, her voice cutting through the chaos. "They'll regroup, but they won't expect the speed and precision we've mastered." Cole followed, his squad moving like a well-oiled machine under her command. The rogue operatives tried to flank, but Riley anticipated every movement, positioning her team to block every escape route and counter every attack. Within moments, the compound was a controlled battlefield. Then Riley spotted their leader, the one who had orchestrated the attacks, the operative whose arrogance had driven the rogue team to act. He was heavily armed, confident, and deadly. He spotted Riley and smirked, as if recognition alone could give him an advantage. "Shadow Wolf," he hissed, voice dripping with venom. "I thought you were dead, thought your legend had ended." Riley's gaze hardened. "Legends don't die," she said softly, her voice carrying deadly certainty. "They survive, they adapt, and they strike when the time is right." The final confrontation was brutal, fast, and precise. Riley moved with a combination of speed, strength, and skill that seemed almost supernatural. Every strike, every maneuver was calculated to incapacitate without unnecessary delay. The operative countered, but Riley was always one step ahead, anticipating, reacting, dominating. Cole watched in awe and fear as Riley engaged the leader. Every move she made was textbook lethal efficiency. She exploited weaknesses, predicted attacks, and neutralized threats with a terrifying elegance. It was a dance of death, fast, calculated, and merciless. Finally, with a decisive move, Riley disarmed and incapacitated the rogue leader. Cole's team moved in, securing the remaining operatives. The battle was over, but the cost was heavy in tension, adrenaline, and the stark realization that this was only possible because of Riley's skill and leadership. Cole approached Riley, chest heaving, eyes wide. "I've never seen anything like that," he said. "You're unreal." Riley's expression softened briefly, but her eyes remained sharp. "This is what it takes," she said. "To survive, to protect, to lead. They underestimated us. They won't make that mistake again." The squad regrouped, adrenaline still high but alive. Cole realized fully that Shadow Wolf's return had changed everything. She had not just survived her enemies, She had trained her squad, protected them, and taught them lessons they would never forget. Riley's gaze swept the compound, scanning for remaining threats. "This is a warning," she said quietly. "The people who sent them will know we're ready. They will think twice before coming again, but we have to remain vigilant. The world isn't waiting for us to rest." Cole nodded, respect and awe mingling with exhaustion. Shadow Wolf had not only survived impossible missions, evaded death countless times, and returned to face her past. She had emerged victorious, leading her squad with unmatched precision and authority. Epilogue suspense hook. As the squad began to secure the base and tend to the wounded, Riley stood on the ridge looking out over the horizon. Her back, marked with the tattoo of a legend, gleamed faintly in the morning light. Somewhere beyond the tree line, signals flickered faintly in the distance, a reminder that while this battle was over, the war of legends and shadows was far from finished. Riley's eyes narrowed. "They'll come again," she whispered. "And when they do, we'll be ready."